Today we have a special guest. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Areli. I'm the creator of No God's Creative Issues, and I study psychology.
Period. You heard that she has a brand, so I highly encourage all of you guys to go and support it. Real cutesy, real feminine.
Yes,
So today's topic is about self growth and self love. So I think that this is a good transition from the first podcast episode because a few people had us dig into self confidence a little bit. So that was
okay.
nice. So, my first question to you is if you were to define self love in 3 words, what would it be and why?
I would say like self confidence and the ability to say no and being able to leave any situation that doesn't reflect your standards.
I love that. I love how you said the ability to say no. I feel like that is so important. And the word no is such a strong word.
Mm,
Such a strong word. And I feel like it's so strong because in the moment that you say that word and someone cannot respect that word, it tells you everything you need to know about that individual.
yes.
And I feel like as women, especially, it's so important
Mm,
to surround yourself with people that can respect the word no because it saves you from so much damage in the long run in any aspect.
yes.
What do you find to be the biggest challenges in finding and navigating a journey of self-love?
I would say just having to be okay with my solitude, like even if it means I have no friends, even if it means I have to like break up with somebody, if like I am self-disrespecting myself just to keep a relationship, it's not it.
I know exactly what you mean. I definitely agree with you on that. I feel like that kind of extends into any relationship, whether it be friendship,
Mhm,
your relationship with family. Although I think that that can be tricky. It depends on certain situations. Um,
mhm.
and obviously, like relationships with a partner, things of that manner. I think that finding peace in solitude is very important. Because no one really knows you as much as you know yourself. And
Yes,
no one really has you as much as you have yourself.
yes,
So I think that as a woman, it's important. Like it's so important knowing who you
yes.
are in so many different ways. So how do you think we could break out of moments of self doubt and negative thoughts? Because I think that that's something that a lot of women deal with, whether it's
Mhm.
based off of their reflection or how they perceive themselves, things like that.
Well, I just feel like you need to like develop a relationship with God because I know that when I didn't have God in my life, I was listening to everybody around me. But when I developed my relationship with God, I was able to discern who He called me to be and who I was just being to be accepted and to be loved. But I felt like I'm able to dismiss thoughts of self doubt when I remind myself, like, oh, God wouldn't give me this purpose if I wasn't qualified.
No, I actually love that answer like a lot. I think that um, your ties with like religion can really like
Mhm.
guide you in so many different
Yeah.
ways. I'm
Mhm.
not too sure how many people that are listening right now are believers. Specifically, I'm a Christian, so I do believe in a God.
Yeah.
But I tend to use that to kind of navigate my way through things that I find to be of importance in my day
Yes.
to day life and in accordance to his word. So I love that. I really do love that. And I think this kind of ties into like my question about giving advice to women that feel that way, more
Mhm.
so in the aspect of social media and misconceptions from society being pushed onto like femininity and standards and like how we should be holding
Mhm.
ourselves or portraying ourselves, things like that.
So like the question is like how they should like navigate it.
Yeah, more so.
It's just weird though because like when it comes to like social media, I feel like you can't really define anybody off of that because it's just a photo. Like that photo was just a quick second. Like you don't know their life behind it. So she can be like really pretty and like, have all the followers, but then like at the end of the day, you don't know like what they're going home to, what they're logging out to. So I would just say like don't compare yourself on social media.
No, I love that, but it's crazy because I feel like it's low key mad hard. Like it's a thing that a lot of
Mhm.
girls deal with,
Yes.
and beauty standards.
Yes.
Beauty standards. I feel like
Yeah.
um, it only has power when you give it power.
Hmm.
And although like it's definitely like for women, it's something that's pushed so heavily, especially
Hmm.
like in our country, like as a whole, I think if you're a woman
Yes.
of color, girl of color, then you kind of
Mhm.
like you deal with beauty standards specifically at a young age, like
Mhm.
you against them.
Yes.
Um, so it's never easy. Like it's never easy. But I think that as I've gotten older, um, one, beauty is so subjective. It's really
Yeah.
within the eyes of the beholder. Like that's a saying for a reason.
Hmm.
I feel like when it comes to navigating self love, it's definitely something like so far as beauty standards, it's out the window. It's a personal thing between like you and yourself.
Hmm.
It's not easy, but it's worth it. 100%. It's worth it.
I agree. And also just like it depends on like what you use social media for too though.
Yeah.
I feel like everybody's feed is cultivated so different. So people will be like, oh, they prefer this way of being, but then somebody else
I love
will not
that.
find that attractive.
I love that you mentioned this because last podcast I mentioned to someone because someone had mentioned, like how can I work on, my self confidence? Like how can I
Mhm.
approach confidence like as a whole? And I did
Yeah.
mention to them, I was like, part of it is what you're actively feeding your brain. So if you feel
Yes.
like social media is affecting you in a negative way, what are you feeding your brain to be feeling negative about it? You know what I mean? To feel negative about yourself or
Yes.
start comparing yourself to others. I feel like once you
Mhm.
start I feel like one, you shouldn't even compare yourself to other people.
Exactly.
And two, once it crosses that line, are they serving you any good purpose on social media other than you just comparing yourself to them? I feel like your page, it's like catered to you and what you're
Yeah.
interacting with and engaging with. But yet again, it's an entire mindset thing because I feel like even if a person that was so low in self-esteem were to change their feed, they'll end
Hmm.
up falling back into that deep hole, like with an entirely different feed because it's always something. I feel like no one is perfect. And
Hmm.
I deal with it. I'm sure that majority of all girls deal with it. They'll always try to find something to nitpick about themselves.
Yes. I feel, but I always just tell people like follow people who look like you.
Yeah.
Like my little sister, she's dark skinned, right?
Hmm.
So I'm just like, you don't want to follow people who don't like reflect you and you just see people hyping them up because then you'll be like, oh, I need to be this skin color to be validated. And that's not the truth.
At all.
So I just always say, like, when it comes to your social media feed, it should reflect who you are, like your algorithm.
Yeah.
So that also helps with confidence. Because also growing up in school, I would be like made fun of because of like my weight and stuff. But then once like finding supermodels, I felt better.
I like that. I definitely like that you mentioned that. I think that that definitely is good advice for those that may need it,
Yeah.
because the self-comparison game with women and other women, it's very real. And I feel like even when girls pretend like they don't do that, trust me, there's moments where every girl does. I feel like no woman out here is fully content with themselves. And I had to mention in the last podcast to someone that had asked,
Mhm.
like, name drop your favorite celebrity's name in the comment right now. I guarantee you that if
Mhm.
you dig deep enough, there's an interview out there of them mentioning that they don't feel as if they're as pretty as the world makes them out to be. You know, I feel like,
Yeah.
I think Megan, not Megan, yeah, Megan Fox had mentioned it, and she's known to
Mhm.
be one of the top 5 prettiest like girls since like the
Yes.
2000s.
Also, Ruby Rose, she
Yeah,
mentioned it.
Ruby Rose. And then what was her name? I think Jessica Alba also mentioned it.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
so many girls that like you see on this on the big screen and you're like, "Oh my god, like I wish I looked like them." And they look in the mirror and they find something that they're not content with. Like it's a
Mhm.
normal thing, but it
It is.
shouldn't be unhealthy, you
Mm-mm.
know? So, if you're personally in a transition journey from girlhood to womanhood, what is some advice you'd give to others during their journey?
I would say, like, you have to make your own definition of what a woman is. Because, like, I know today there's a lot of how to be feminine podcasts and like advice and stuff, but I just believe that there's no way to be a woman. It's just who you are. Like, you're automatically a woman because that's the body you were given. So
Yeah,
I just feel like you should just, I don't know, really, I just like, I don't know, honestly, because I'm like in my own confused journey of going from like 20 to 21. So it's like, I'm still figuring it out myself.
yeah. So far as you and your personal journey, like, have you come across any like big challenges? Like for example, for me,
Hmm.
it's more so on a deeper level of me not only transitioning like into like womanhood for real, but like adulthood as a whole. You know, like
Hmm.
moving and I've more or less always financed myself, but it's like these big finances now, like, down payment
Hmm.
on a place, looking for a place, like getting
Yes.
accepted into a place, like things like that. Those are my personal
Mhm.
challenges right now. And I was just wondering, are there any like big challenges for you, like with your transition?
I would say like the relationship with my parents, like being able
Mm,
to realize that like, oh, being able to realize that like I'm not like I don't have to answer to them as much as I do. I don't have to tell them everything I'm doing. And sometimes that's hard because it's like, oh, I need advice. But then I'm like, I want my life to be a byproduct of my decisions and not my parents'
I
validation.
like that.
I think my adulthood has become realizing that like I'm an adult too now. I'm not just a child.
Yeah.
And then also when it comes to dating, like I felt like my brain developed when I was like, I can't do what I was doing when I was 18. Like I can't just date for fun. Like this is my actual life.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah.
That's so important. I feel like relationships tie into the
Hmm.
talk of self love so much, so much,
Yeah.
because it kind of brings me back to like my second question I asked you, like the biggest challenges
Mhm.
in finding and navigating a journey to self love. One of those
Mhm.
challenges are men. One
Yes.
of those challenges are men.
Yes. No, literally.
Because like it's so crazy how much power like we as women, because
Hmm.
when you really look at it, I could kind of understand how they say like women are lead with emotion and men aren't as
Yes.
emotional. They tend to kind of like it's more so like a mental thing, like, and even though like
Yes.
it sounds crazy because it's like, oh my goodness, like sometimes men don't think, but this podcast is not to put down men, but it's like
Mhm.
like I think that women, like, they really do lead with emotion and heart. So once you're
Mhm.
investing all that emotion and heart to another person, right, it kind
Yes.
of, once again, I mentioned with self-love, it's all from within. So then it's like you're
Yeah.
pouring parts of yourself to another person, and with that
Mhm.
comes vulnerability and the ability to let them kind of control your mind in ways you may have not thought. You know, if someone
Yes.
walked up to you the beginning of your relationship, like, listen, you got to be careful. Before you know it, you're going to start comparing yourself to so and so. Like, nah,
Mm.
never.
Oh, wait, that's another thing though. So my little sister, she went on this date today, and the ex was like, stalking her profile and stuff. And I really realized that women compare themselves to who is next,
All the
like who's after
time.
you. And I just feel like self-love becomes a point to where like you don't want to do that anymore. It's just like they didn't choose me, so why am I, still infatuated with their
I
actions?
really like that. I really like
Oh,
that because little things like that goes to show how much you're like growing within. It's the same
mhm,
concept of like once you get out of your relationship with someone, you know, you
mhm.
finally stop caring about what they're doing. I don't care who he's talking
Yeah,
to now, or I don't care what
yeah.
he's engaging with after me. Little things like that, that's when
Mhm,
you realize that you're actually healing, letting go parts of yourself and progressing.
mhm.
You know, same thing with like, it doesn't even have to be a relationship, friendships. I think one of the
Mhm.
biggest moments of self love for me personally, which really hits home, is, you know, I knew
Mhm.
this. I don't want to really put her tea out there either because I'm not speaking down on her. You know, we managed to
Yeah.
reconcile, and I
Mhm.
still wish her nothing but the best moving forward. And I know that she wishes the same for me because we did have a talk 2 years
Mhm.
after we stopped, you know, being friends. You know, we had a
Yeah.
really mature sit down, and I low key kind of appreciate it. I was the one that
Mhm.
cut ties because I felt as if I was outgrowing her in certain ways,
Yeah.
but there was a lot that played into that as well, you know, rude comments being made. I
Oh.
think that there was a lot of self projecting at the time. And she also had mentioned that during our talk. She was like, you know, I don't know what was up with me. I think I was just
Mhm.
really young and dumb, and I wasn't appreciating, you know, a real friend that I had. But me and this girl grew up in the sandbox. I knew her since I was 2, you know, so
Mhm.
I consider her to be a sister. And our moms, you know, were close together and everything. But there was a lot of things that I heard, a lot of things that I've seen, a lot of exclusion happening, despite me reeling
Yes.
her back in. Like, listen, you're entitled to have your own friends the same way I'm entitled to have my own friends, you know, like, but I just feel as if we share the same space. You
Mhm.
know, there should be some type of like, you know, like welcoming environment, but it never gave that. At some point you could
Mhm.
see the transition from friendship to mean girl activity, and I was like, you know,
Yes.
I'm a very sweet girl. It shouldn't be to the point where you guys are, you know, getting food knowing that I'm chilling here, like, you know, and not extending an invitation, like little things like that, little mannerisms, you know, and it
Yeah.
progressively added up over time. And this is why it was such a big challenge. I was like, it's between me staying in something that I know isn't good for me and
Mhm.
holding on to, at the time it was about 16 years of friendship. Probably, I think it was about 16 years of friendship, you know, since we knew each
Wow.
other when we were 2. I was like,
Yeah.
so do I hold on to these 16 years of what I thought this person was like, or do I
Mhm.
make the decision to put myself first because I see how they're not putting me in any regard? You know,
Yes.
that's what self-love is. You know, when you finally take that step, like, listen, this person isn't treating me the way that I feel as if I should be treated. I need to
Yeah.
start treating myself in the manners that I think is best, because they won't. You shouldn't keep people like that around.
Yeah. And I like how you said like you thought she was somebody, but she actually wasn't that person because that happens a lot too.
It does. And, you know, at the same time, we were both growing. But one thing
Mhm.
that kept me grounded is that typically all people know right from wrong.
Yes. And that's really it. It's just the moral compass that people pretend they don't have, but we all have it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I feel like it's,
Uh,
but once again, my favorite saying is, what they're not changing, they're choosing. So, you know, once you
Yeah.
address it to them, because like I said, with me and this person specifically, I did address it to them. Hey, like, I feel a
Mhm.
little excluded, but I also, you know, respectfully spoke with them like, listen, you know, you're allowed to have your own people. It wasn't like a controlling friendship, like, never that.
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
I was very mature with the way I handled everything. Or, hey, like I heard this and that. I just want clarity about what was said because I don't know if they're lying. Like,
Yeah.
it's just crazy because then it's like that doesn't serve you any purpose. It
Mhm.
doesn't. And when you're in that state of, growing together with a person, you start
Mhm.
seeing who they really are, and sometimes who you once thought they were as kids. My favorite saying is
Yeah.
all kids are innocent. We grew up and we're
Yeah.
innocent, like, you know what I mean? But as we get
Mhm.
older, we adapt and we change to our environment and trying to fit in with certain people. Like, people
Yeah.
change. But one
I
thing
feel
you
like
should never change on is yourself.
uh,
You always need to put you first.
when you said that like they didn't invite you, can you like expand that into like the self-love topic? Because it has to be like when you exude a certain confidence, people don't like being around that.
I like that, because this reminds me, man, my confidence, I feel like, me personally, sometimes I
Mhm.
don't see it. But it seems
Mhm.
like other people see it more than me.
Yeah,
Because
yes.
one thing that she at the time, once again, I'm not speaking down on her. If,
Mhm.
I just want to clarify that. Not speaking down
Yeah.
on her. Sweet girl, outside of our issues. Then, one thing I
Mhm.
did hear from her and a few other people was like, oh, like she's stuck up. But
Mm.
I heard that more so
Mm.
because of the way I carried myself. To me, when I
Yeah.
hear, oh, she's stuck up, I think, oh, she doesn't take no shit.
Yeah.
That's how I take it, because it's like, no, I'm a very sweet girl when you get to know me. But if you try
Mhm.
some shit, yeah, I may come off a little stuck up. If you're trying
Yes.
to, reel me in for anything that fits your needs, especially if
Mhm.
you are a man, yeah, I'm stuck up.
Yeah.
But if you're coming to me as like a person with, good intentions,
Mhm.
you're going to get a conversation out of me and you'll realize who I am as a person. But
Well,
sometimes you need to
yes.
be that way.
Exactly. That's why I created No Bad Spirited Bitches, because like I relate to you when you say like people don't invite you places because they think you're stuck up and they don't like that you love yourself. Like me liking
Yeah.
myself is an issue with a lot of people. Like all of my relationships that ended was because I liked myself. Like they didn't understand as to why I didn't need them to feel good.
No, I definitely agree. 100%. Man, I could go into this topic for days. So far as like the whole being stuck up thing, I feel like as a
Mhm.
girl, it reminds me of, we were discussing the book, um, Why Men Love Bitches.
Mhm.
And I want to start reading that book because I feel like as a woman, you could still be very, very sweet, but you
Yes.
should still be a bitch. Like, there's moments where you should be that way. Like, not in a mean girl way, but more so when it comes to your boundaries, your standards, and the way that you perceive yourself, your values,
Mhm.
and you hold up to them. It's not just words. You need to live to those things. You know what I mean? Or
Mhm.
else it's not going to be effective. Once you
Well,
finally live
yeah.
up to it, yeah, people are going to find you to be a bitch. But that's not a bad thing. It just means that you love yourself.
Well, yeah. Like, I don't know. I always say I'd rather be alone than be used, so I don't mind being a
I
bitch.
love that. I love that. With another big thing that gave me clarity in my self-love journey was the
Mhm.
way you allow people to treat you is the way you is it's as much as how you hold yourself. If
Yes.
you keep people around you that don't respect you, that cross your boundaries one too many times, and boundaries are so important.
Mhm.
And you know that they're not healthy for you to keep around. It's just a
Mhm.
reflection of the way that you feel as if you value yourself. And
Yes.
once you finally see your self-value, you'll start making the necessary changes to your life. And that comes with removing people. And
Mhm.
sometimes that hurts. Sometimes it's not pretty, but
Mhm.
it turns out beautiful at the end. So with like our talk so far as like relationships, whether that's like friendships or with a partner,
Mhm.
How do you think that people can balance independence and vulnerability in any relationship?
I feel like I'm gonna be honest, I'm not really the best person to talk about like being vulnerable with because I haven't had like a relationship that felt safe to be that because it's just like when you have certain things and you look a certain way, it's harder for you to connect with people because they already have like a pre-perception of you.
Yeah,
So I would just say that like futuristically, I would want to like balance my actual feelings and my like how I present myself with like feeling just safe. It takes safety with the person to
I agree.
that's that. And a lot of these people are not safe. Like they just want to take your pain and cause you more with it. And I just don't like that.
Yeah, it seems like I'm the same. I'm sort of like you. And it seems
Mhm.
that most people tend to take advantage of people like us.
Yes.
And this is one thing that I've learned to stop doing. I'm no longer allowing people that are broken to enter
Mm-hmm.
my life and take my light.
Exactly. Exactly. No basket of issues. Yes.
Because I feel like I'm at that point where I kind of have myself put together. Especially, I'm a lot more emotionally regulated than to
Mm-hmm.
have someone too damaged come in. And because 9 times out
Mm-hmm.
of 10, there's a few light leechers. Not everyone's like that. I think that you should still be sweet and kind to everyone, and help
Yes.
them in moments where they need help. But so far as,
Yes.
pursuing anything long term, especially with relationships, there are a lot of
Mm-hmm.
light leechers, and their
Mm-hmm.
energy ends up draining yours. Like, I'm no longer building people that tend to break me, because I've
Yeah.
experienced that a lot, one too many times, whether that's
Mm-hmm.
friendships. This refers to the example I gave you, with my close friend growing up. I made that decision for me because it seemed like I was still building her when she was
Yeah.
breaking me. So far it's she mentions anything, because I at the moment I've seen that her self-love wasn't really there, and I tried to water her a little bit. She'll mention
Yeah.
anything she didn't like. I'd be like, okay, so we could change that. You want to start doing
Mm-hmm.
this? Let's start doing that. If that's going to make you feel better, let's do it.
Yeah.
But either behind my back or quite literally physically in front of me, she would say things like oh, I don't need makeup to look good, while I'm,
Okay.
doing a soft beat to head out. Like, oh,
You know what's
okay.
fun? Yes, I just cut somebody off like 2 weeks ago for that because we're doing the makeup on FaceTime to go out, and she was all like, "Oh, all I need is some
Oh,
lashes."
I don't need makeup to look good. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and at the time
Yes.
we had quite a few people like in our room, and I was like, oh, I didn't say
Mhm.
anything. I continued doing my makeup and I headed out, because I'm not feeding into it. I've never been one to feed into stuff like that. But I'm just
Well, that's
thinking,
good.
like, wow, like any moment you feel low about yourself, I'm always your pick me up. But it seems like
Mhm.
even in moments I don't need a pick me up, you're always a put me down. Like, I don't get it. I don't.
Yeah.
So it's important to make those decisions for you and remove people. For me personally, I'm in the process of learning how to balance my independence and my vulnerability. Whether that be any relationship with family, it can be hard because once again, I am in that transition where I'm relocating, finding my own
Mhm.
place, and with that comes independence, obviously, but with parents, they tend to try to hold on.
Yes.
And I try to stay vulnerable with them,
Mhm.
because at the end of the day, they're the most supportive people I can have by my side.
Mhm.
But then I try to balance that out with, I can't be too vulnerable, because when I get too vulnerable, they're not going to think I'm dependent enough to do things on my own. That could be very
Yes.
hard. The aspect of friendships, that could be very, very hard for me, especially with my last situation. Girl, friendship PTSD is real.
No, it really
It
is.
really is. And after that, I went through a moment of solitude. I think that's when I grew a lot. Like I said, I have not spoke to them
Yeah.
for about 2 years. This past
Mhm.
year, we recently had a sit down talk one on one. I think she was trying to do it over the phone. I was like, listen, I think that this talk is one that needs to be had in person, and I'm
Mhm.
open to that. So we did have our talk, went well, but the first thing that she mentioned to me was like, you grew a lot.
Mhm.
And I was like, I've been hearing that a lot recently, but I think that truly she helped me grow.
Yes.
Um, she may not see it, but I think I entirely do. I think that she did help me grow, although it
Mhm.
wasn't in the best way. With me having to remove her or me having to deal with the things I have dealt with.
Mhm.
I low key do appreciate everything that unfolded, because through that I matured and I learned to love myself so much, because at the time I seemed a bit too dependent on other people.
Yes. I think that's where my self-love developed too, was like this is cool. They were like, the hope I didn't get is the hope that helped me the most. And that's just like my
Yeah.
life story, really. And then I'm also learning that independence doesn't mean isolation. Like, I
Mm,
feel like that's how I would balance things. Cause I used to be like, oh my God, I need to like get away from everybody. I'm done. Then I realized I can still be myself without pushing everyone out of my life.
yeah. No, that is very true, and that is also very important.
Because you need
Um,
people, especially as a woman, like community is your protection.
yes, sisterhood,
Mhm.
girlhood is so important, and
Yes.
despite my issue with that one distinct person, I can
Mhm.
say that I have a small little group of friends that I cherish wholeheartedly, because
Yes.
they're like me. And although we did not grow up together since we were two, one of them is from Georgia and she moved to my hometown when she was like in fifth grade. She's about a year or two older than me. So
Mhm.
she's always been there. And then there's another girl that's about a year older than her, and another girl about my age, and we were like a small little friend group growing up.
Mhm.
But I kind of like, I don't know, was in connection with other people as well. Like, you know how it could be as we're younger. Everyone has different
Yes.
friends and stuff, but those were
Mhm.
like sisters, and those are the very few friends that I reconnect with every time I do go back to my hometown.
Mhm.
We catch up over drinks and dinner, and when we talk, it's like you realize once you're put in a healthy environment like that, I think this is the perfect example of where I can be independent and
Mhm.
entirely vulnerable, because with them I feel safe, I feel secure, and I know that I'm surrounded by people that are also mentally the same as me. They're
Mhm.
very grounded. They don't put people down.
That's a
They,
good thing.
you
Yeah.
could also tell by the way that they speak on it, even if they don't like something or something
Mhm.
that someone may do, the way that they go about it with their approach and how they handle it,
Mhm.
instead of gossiping or criticizing, ridiculing,
Mhm.
the way that they present little things like that to you, you realize, okay, like despite how they may feel, they still
Mhm.
hold other people in the regard of, okay, like they're also people, and
Yes.
I'm not going to ruin their character or ridicule their character. And like, although sometimes that is needed, you could tell when like a girl is like a healthy girl,
Yes.
you
Well, that's a
know
great one. Yes.
because some girls, if we're going to talk about sisterhood, friendship, if they're out here gossiping about other women,
Mhm.
9 times out of 10 they don't love themselves. They don't.
I don't.
And usually it stems from a place of projection, and they
Yes.
do it to feel a little bit better about
Mhm.
themselves. If it seems like it's a thing that happens a little bit too often, you got to really sit back and think, am I supposed to be around this person, and are they also talking about me?
Well, yes, they are. Like
Yeah, clock it.
they are.
Usually,
Um,
self-love is so important. Being independent is very important, but also
mhm.
learning how to be vulnerable with people is also important. But you should, once you know how much you love yourself and you start practicing your journey of self-love, you'll
Mhm.
also know who to give your vulnerability to,
Yes.
you know?
And I also feel like trust issues and independence go hand in hand. And I just to say that, like, you won't really like be paranoid about people's intentions when you know that despite what they do, you'll be taken care of because like you're not depending on them.
Yeah.
Oh, that's another thing of self-love. To be like self-established is self-love to me.
Yeah, I
Mm.
definitely agree with that.
Because my mom, like, she met my dad in college and he went to the NFL, but like if her whole plan was to be like, oh, I'm gonna be an NFL wife, then she wouldn't have anything.
She would have, and she also would have just put up with anything.
Yeah. So she really taught me that self-love is being able to depend on yourself.
You know, I like that example because um I feel like usually things like that lead into abusive relationships. And that doesn't mean having
Yes.
to literally get like domestically like hit on, but
Mhm.
financial abuse is
Is
very
it?
real.
Yes.
And when you're put in a situation like that where you're so dependent on a person and you're pouring your all into a person, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that's saying the what you should be pouring into yourself, instead you're pouring into someone else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And once they start letting you down, disrespecting you, and you begin to tolerate,
Mm-hmm.
it will nine times, because your eyes are focused on one thing instead, you know, well, he financially does this for me, or he's going to make it into the big league, or, you know, anything like that, you're going to end up settling and tolerating, and you're also doing yourself a big disadvantage. That is not self-love.
Well, yeah, and then also I don't understand why people keep promoting, oh, you need to find somebody rich, not knowing that their money doesn't mean
Huh.
they're going to be generous with it with you. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like God intentionally gave me parents who, have the life that social media promotes to realize that, like, okay, yes, it's glamorous, but you still have to have something for yourself.
Oh yeah, for sure. As in, I feel like as a woman, it's so
Hmm.
important, and that's something that my father taught me.
Yeah.
Um, you know, because I was the only daughter, the only girl in my house growing up. My father cherishes me to a T, and one thing he has always taught me, you know, growing up is like, you know, put yourself first, get your degree, and you know, make something of yourself.
Yeah.
Because
Because
as a woman, no one can take that away from you.
yeah.
Absolutely no one. Because men, once again, this is not a podcast to put down men, but
Yeah.
anyone in general, men, other women,
Mhm.
anyone, nine times out of 10, people like to take. People are
Yes,
greedy like that. They like to take.
they do. But that's
Oh,
also,
yeah.
I remember like when I joined Twitter, you were like one of the first people I followed. And it was because like you weren't just like posting selfies, it was like intellectual things too.
No, I really appreciate that.
So like that's what I like to see is like it's not all about physical appearance, but like your demeanor. I always like to.
No, I really appreciate that. You're, girl, you're low key like me though, because you're very level headed.
Mm-hmm.
You're very level headed, and I love the entire brand you got going on. Like,
You,
you guys, I'm telling you, I'm promoting no bad spirited bitches, because we don't want no bad spirited bitches,
you
right?
don't.
And her whole thing, her whole thing is quite literally the promotion of self love.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this topic is, you know, catered to her for a reason.
Yeah.
She does have a TikTok page, and her TikTok page is also full of, you know, encouragement,
Mm-hmm.
you know, womanhood, femininity, self love, navigating all of them as one.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys need to definitely check it out. It's important.
Thank you.